Well, today we're going to be talking about the wildfires that are happening in the state of California right now. And this hits close to home because I'm originally from Southern California. So this really does influence, my family and what's going on there. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to be taking a look at the astrology chart of Gavin Newsom to kind of get an idea of the scope of the crisis from his point of view, using the astrological energies, of course. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. I noticed that there was a lot of similarities with the chart of Donald Trump and also the chart of JD Vance, in which we saw that when Saturn changes signs in March, that there's an emergency being experienced in those charts. Well, Gavin Newsom, we'll see, is kind of experiencing the same thing. That's what we're going to be looking at today. So stick around so you can get some information on that. So make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you to all my new subs and all your support, by the way. When you purchase readings, it definitely does support my channel and what I do. If you're interested in a reading, check down below for details. By the way, I practice Vedic sidereal astrology. I say it's more inspired by, since I'm not extremely orthodox about it, and I do use my intuition. And by the way, if you're interested in metaphysics or healing, I have another YouTube channel called Thor's Meditations. The link is going to be down below. And I also have an Instagram channel, which is it's focused on divination. It's a little bit different than this channel, but I just wanted to let you know if you're interested in my content. My Instagram channel is called Norse underscore shaman underscore Thor if you're interested. And that's more about spiritual teachings, divination like tarot cards, divination like runes and things like that. So if you're interested, check out my Instagram channel. Well, let's go ahead and let's dive into the chart here. And remember, these astrology readings, of course, are for entertainment purposes only. So any statement about Gavin Newsom, well, it's just my interpretation of the astrological energies. So let's pull up the chart of Gavin Newsom. The one thing I want to bring up, even before we really talk about Gavin Newsom's chart, is you may remember the USA chart, which I don't have up at the moment, but the USA chart, Saturn is in the fourth house of the USA chart, and it's going over the natal moon. And the USA itself is in something called Sati Sati. And it's in the core of this Sati Sati where Saturn's going over the moon in the sign of Aquarius. It's been like this since January 2023, and it's about to end when the Saturn transit ends there. But usually there's a time of crisis. Usually it's not a good time for anyone that's going through Sati Sati. Sometimes there's like a lack of support. Sometimes there could be some sort of tragedy. So I just want to keep that in mind in the overall scope of the USA. There's kind of this difficult time of this Sati Sati, and we're getting towards the end of the Saturn transit, which could bring up some really difficult karma for the country as a whole, not just California. But now let's go to Gavin Newsom's chart. Now he's similar to people like Donald Trump and JD Vance. He's a Leo ascendant. They all are Leo ascendant. And one of the things that's happening in Gavin Newsom's chart is, so Rahu is in the eighth house of Pisces, and then Ketu is in the second house of Virgo. Now, this transit, it started in October of 2023. It's about to end May 19th of 2025. But one of the things when Rahu is in the eighth house, which is going to be for the next 5 months or so, is there's this idea of an emergency. Okay, an emergency or a crisis. And there's also this idea, and this is from Gavin Newsom's point of view of his chart. There's this idea of an opportunity as well that comes along with this crisis, because it's interesting what Rahu does is when Rahu's in the eighth house, there's some sort of a situation where it might be perceived as a very fearful type of emergency, but there's this opportunity that comes along with this crisis or this emergency. So I wanted to let you all know about that first. There's a kind of this crisis, but there's an opportunity presented with it. Now, what I saw in the one of the interviews with Gavin Newsom was he was already talking about there's already this discussions of this what he says a new Marshall Plan for the state of California. So it's already kind of cluing us into some of the extent of the damage that could possibly, be happening with these fires when they're talking about a new Marshall Plan. For those of you that don't know what the Marshall Plan is, after World War II, it was basically a program to help rebuild Europe. Well, they're talking about the similar thing with the state of California with these fires. If you're bringing up this idea of a Marshall Plan, it definitely lends to this idea that these fires are a lot, there might be a lot more damage than we know, because they're still fighting the fires as of the making of this video. So that's one thing to bring up. Also, with Saturn being in the eighth house, it rules the sixth house in Gavin Newsom's chart. And, Rahu is like a portal, it tends to open up that house. It makes the veil very thin. And so there's this idea of with Saturn being there, there's this destructive tendency. For Leo ascendant, Saturn is not, it's a really difficult planet to work with. First of all, Leo's ruled by the sun, and then Saturn is like the arch enemy of the sun. So it's bringing up a lot of difficult karma with the Rahu being in the same house as Saturn. So there's this transformation that's taking place. Now, Rahu being in the eighth house can also represent a transformation that's happening in general. Okay, so there's this really big transformation between now and May. Now, the thing I really want to bring up with this astrology reading, as far as some of the transits, is the Saturn transit that is currently in the sign of Aquarius is going to enter the eighth house. It's actually going to be with Rahu for a month or two, about a month and a half. But this is going to happen on March 29th of 2025 here. And so when Saturn enters the eighth house, again, usually there's a time of crisis. It's usually not seen as an opportunity per se, like when Rahu's in the eighth house. It's more of just this crisis that Saturn is trying to maintain, maintain order. Now, upon some of my, research, when I look at what does it mean when Saturn is in the eighth house, it can go from more of a mild personal emergency. For example, somebody could be having some financial difficulty, or, going through a bankruptcy proceeding, or somebody could be in the midst of, thinking about getting a divorce. Some of these things can happen when Saturn is transiting the eighth house. There's this idea of this crisis that's being frozen in time. Well, the thing about it is, because he's the governor of California, we can kind of, we can make some inferences about what this would mean. Some of the broader interpretations of Saturn entering the eighth house, and like I said, this is happening in Donald Trump's chart, in J.D. Vance's chart, is in the literature, I've read things like it could represent martial law. It can represent emergency actions of the government. It can represent a financial crash of some sort. So when I see this happening in more than one major politician's chart, it's got me a little bit worried. So this fire, it's not out of as of the time of the video. The devastation and the impact of this fire and what's happening may have longer term reverberations than we can even know. So there is this idea of this long-term rebuilding thing. So when he talks about a Marshall Plan, this is very serious. So Saturn in the eighth house could represent that Marshall Plan. It could represent that rebuilding, and trying to get through this crisis. So what I'm seeing with the astrology chart here is there's this idea of dominoes. This could be a domino of that leads to other crises that need to be managed. Okay. So this could possibly put the state of California, in my view, in a very difficult spot. So there could be, for example, if the fire is very big, there could be a lot of businesses that end up closing. There could be a lot of job loss. There could be a lot of homelessness. And this could be a lot bigger than people can even imagine. So I see there's sort of a state of emergency, at least from the point of view of Gavin Newsom's chart. But knowing that Trump's chart, JD Vance's chart all lend this to this idea, it's got me thinking that this is a really serious situation. Now, the other thing I want to bring up is currently he's in a sun, what's known as a sun antardasha, which is the timeline he's on. So he's in a sun period. That's the Vimshatari dasha here. It's in the second house. It rules the first house. So this is a time of him being in the spotlight, a time of him kind of taking charge. That's where, Rahu in the eighth house could lend to this idea of being able to kind of provide leadership, be seen as providing leadership. Now, I know he's gotten some bad press. For example, I saw a video of a woman that had approached him, while he was entering a car, and that was kind of bad press. But I see that this could actually help him in a way that people can't see right now, because there's a lot of finger pointing right now, but sun kind of shows there's a lot of leadership. There's a lot of attention, okay, that's being brought to him. And this definitely could advance a career, because sun is very strong for Leo ascendant. Okay. But the thing is he's going to be changing into his moon antardasha. That's going to be in June. So some of the ramifications of this crisis could be leading to some trouble around summer, because moon rules the 12th house, and the 12th house can represent things like losses. In the worst case scenarios, it can represent things like endings, resignations. In very extreme scenarios, it could represent a resignation. Although I think that's going to be he's going to be very conservative because of Saturn being in the eighth house. Saturn prevents when it's in the eighth house, it's preventing rash actions. It's preventing like making a decision that's impulsive. It's preventing anything too fast. One of the things about when Saturn's in the eighth house, and this is going to be for all Leo ascendants, by the way, is there's this idea of Saturn is freezing the crisis, but there's really no great solutions to whatever's going on. The solution is frozen. So you usually don't see those solutions until later on. So that would be 2027 when Saturn goes into the sign of Aries. So that will be later on. So I do feel like this crisis, whatever this crisis is emerging to be, the ramifications of this are going to be very serious. This is already, I think, the largest fire that's happened in Los Angeles County. This might be, as far as economic cost, it might be one of the largest as far as economic impact in the country, with everything that's going on. So my wish, of course, is that they do put out this fire as soon as possible, but I see the ramifications being rather serious and rather devastating with some of these placements I see in Gavin Newsom's chart. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, and I will be more than happy to read those. Let me know if you have any more charts you'd like me to read or take a look at. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.